Hi guys, this is Erin, aka Food Science Babe. Um, I'll just wait a little bit to let some people join before I get started. But today I'm going to be talking about what I do as a food scientist, how I became a food scientist, why I started my Food Science Babe page, how I became a facts-based consumer versus a fear-based consumer. Um, If you already follow me on Facebook, if you don't follow me, you can follow me at Food Science Babe, on Instagram at Food Science Babe, or on Twitter at Food Sci Babe. Thanks if you already follow me. I'll just wait for some more people to join before I get started. So for everybody just joining, again, my name's Erin, aka Food Science Babe. Um, I'll just get started talking about kind of um, from the beginning, how I got interested in food, how I decided to become a food scientist, all that kind of stuff. So I guess my interest in food kind of started probably in high school. I guess, yeah, I just started being interested in cooking and wanted to kind of start eating healthier, even though at the time I didn't really know what healthier really was, but started going grocery shopping with my mom, picking out my own foods and learning how to cook, stuff like that. And at the same time, I also started going to the co-op natural food store with my dad, and he liked going there to buy certain foods, so I started going there with him. And I think that was the first time I was probably introduced to the organic label. I think it was probably a pretty new label at the time too, and I didn't really know what it meant, but it was at the natural food store, so I just assumed that organic was healthier. So I guess that's kind of how my belief in organic probably started, was in high school. Again, I didn't really know a lot about nutrition, and the sources I was getting my info from probably weren't very science-based at the time. So I started to get a lot of beliefs around organic and thought it was healthier. Started eating, trying to buy more organic foods just because I did think that they were healthier. I thought they were better for the environment. Started seeing them more in the bigger grocery stores as well. And they're always under the heading of natural foods, and you kind of assume that means better, healthier. So for a long time, I believed organic was better. And then in high school, I was trying to decide what I wanted to do for a career, and I really enjoyed chemistry, really enjoyed math. So I decided that I wanted to go into chemical engineering. At the time, I really didn't know what that really entailed, what chemical engineers did. I probably didn't even really know about food science at the time. If I did, that's probably what I would have gone into, but I don't even think I knew that was a thing yet. So I decided to go into chemical engineering. I went to the University of Minnesota. So I was born in Minnesota. I've lived here pretty much my whole life. So I went to the University of Minnesota for chemical engineering. Probably like 2 years into it, I did find out that there was something called food science, and I actually thought about switching, but it would have taken me a year longer, so I just decided to stick with chemical engineering. And then I kind of had a feeling I would get into the food industry either way, so I just decided to finish out my chemical engineering degree and then see if I could get into the food industry as a chemical engineer. So right out of college, I started at a large food ingredient company in an engineering role. So that was in Iowa. It was at a corn milling plant. So typical engineering role, putting heat exchangers in, doing different things with distillation columns, all the kind of unit op stuff that we learned about in chemical engineering. I kind of decided probably 6 months into it that wasn't really what I wanted to do. I wanted to be more on the product development side of things. So around that time, they had an opening at one of their R&D labs. They had a new snacks and cereal pilot plant that they were looking for an engineer or a food scientist to kind of help with taking products from the bench top that the food scientists would develop and then bringing it to the pilot plant and then also bringing it to full-scale production. So I ended up interviewing for that job and getting it. So when I started at that job, basically there was just a huge empty room that was the pilot plant. They had all the equipment ordered and I had to get it in, set it all up, learn about all of it because I really hadn't been involved yet in developing food products or anything like that. So read all the equipment manuals. One of the, I guess, most complex pieces of equipment in that pilot plant was a twin screw extruder, which is used to make cereal products, corn puffs, kind of things like Cheetos, stuff like that. So I took a few courses to figure out how to run that, had the manufacturer come in to teach me how to get that up and running. So I was in that role for, I think, around 4 years, and that's where I gained a lot of my food science knowledge. So working with the food scientists, working on benchtop development, and then taking it from there to our pilot plant. And then I did a lot of scale ups as well. So going out to full scale manufacturers and developing it full scale. So since we were an ingredient company, none of our products, like we weren't necessarily creating products that you would see on the store shelf, but we worked with a lot of companies that used our ingredients. So we would help them develop their products, or if they were having issues with ingredients, helping them formulate, and then also just formulating prototypes for the salespeople to go out and to show, hey, we have this new ingredient, this is what you can use it in. So a lot of that work, I developed a lot of granola type bars, a lot of cereal products, cereal flakes, puffs, kind of corn puff type things. And then also I did work on a little bit on protein bars, but most of it was on granola bar work with using different types of corn syrups and seeing how they affected, the chewiness of the bar, stuff like that. So that really got me into food science, and I call myself a food scientist, even though I didn't go to school for food science, but I've worked for over 10 years now in the food industry, more in a food scientist role, still also engineering as well, because I helped to scale up the products too. But I learned a lot of benchtop development work at that company. At the time, so that was a conventional ingredient company, and at the time, I still really, I was mostly an organic foods consumer, still really believed in, organic was better. Read some of the Michael Pollan books, it was just like still thinking that organic was better, never really looked into the science of it. So I actually ended up quitting that job. I was there for 4 years, and then I actually started my own soap company, so handmade, all natural soaps, and I did that for I think like 1 or 2 years, and then after doing that, I kept doing it. So I got my soap into some stores, did some farmers markets, and ended up wanting to find another position as a food scientist, but in more of a natural foods company. So I started working for a much smaller company than I had worked for before, and they made ready-to-eat popcorn products. So I was their only food scientist. They had a very small lab. I had 1 or 2 technicians helping me out. Very fast-paced. They were a startup company, so compared to the ingredient company that I was at previously, where you would take, 6 months to develop a product and then it wouldn't even go anywhere. I mean, we were developing products at this small company, like, I mean, 20 products like in a couple months, and we would launch, a product or two every month. So it was kind of crazy how different it was. I liked how fast paced it was. I liked at first when I started working there, like I enjoyed working for a more natural company, kind of in line with my beliefs at the time. I was the person that got their products non-GMO project verified, and that's kind of when I started questioning it a little bit. I just kind of realized how arbitrary the non-GMO label was, and I was involved in a lot of the meetings where, we talked about our target market and which products we wanted to try to get non-GMO verified, and a lot of that stuff is so marketing based. I kind of started realizing like these labels aren't necessarily like telling the consumer that the product is healthier. It's kind of just like, hey, who's our target market? Typically, if it's moms of young children, like it's like, okay, let's do non-GMO and maybe even organic because they're the ones that will pay more for it. And then, yeah, I just was kind of realizing like in getting it verified, basically all the company does is pay them a yearly fee, and then I think there's a fee per product or something like that, and then I don't remember exactly how much it was. I'd have to look that up, but basically a lot of our products also were products that didn't even have ingredients with GMO counterparts. So that was the other thing I was kind of like, this is kind of dumb. Like, why would we get this non-GMO verified if it doesn't even have ingredients that can be GMO? I mean, like I said, it was popcorn. There's no GMO popcorn. But a lot of people think like corn, so there is, but there really isn't. But yeah, anyway, so you basically just pay the non-GMO project. You get the documents from the ingredient suppliers, and then you submit the documents showing that they're not from GMO sources, essentially, and then they send you the certification, and then you can use their label on your product. So yeah, I just kind of started realizing kind of how arbitrary it was. And that's kind of when my beliefs started shifting a little bit. I can go into more like what I did there as a food scientist too. So as a food scientist, not only do we formulate the products, but we also work with the ingredient suppliers. So getting in ingredients, whether we want the product to be gluten-free, organic, non-GMO, kosher, we have to kind of know all those things up front. So when we contact the ingredient suppliers, we know what documents that we need to get. So that was a lot of the work that I did there. So sourcing ingredients was like one of the big things, as well as obviously formulating the products, making the products in the lab. And then at that smaller company that I worked for, they didn't really have any regulatory people at all. So that was kind of all new to me. I had to learn. I kind of had some exposure to creating nutrition facts panels at my previous company that I worked for, but it was mostly just to help me with developing products. Like if we were trying to do something with sugar reduction, I had software that I could see, if I reduce the sugar this much, this is how much it reduces it on the label. But now at this company, since they didn't have a regulatory department, I was the one creating the labels that were actually going to be put on the package. So I had to learn a lot about that, because obviously if those things are wrong, you can get into a lot of legal trouble with the FDA if you're not declaring the nutritionals right. And then also just the regulatory things that go into what you can and can't put on your package. So all of that was new to me. I don't even know if I knew what the CFR was before I started in that position. And so that's basically the regulations, the FDA regulations, and they outline everything that needs to be on the nutrition panel, ingredient facts panel, like how you have to declare the net weight on the package, all that kind of stuff, what kind of claims you can make on the front, how you label flavors, natural flavors, all that kind of stuff. So I really had to dig in and learn all of that. And it was kind of nerve-wracking just because they could get into trouble if I told them to do something and it ended up being wrong. So luckily I had some consultants to work with that if I had questions that I wasn't sure about, they taught me a lot of stuff along the way too. But yeah, so as a food scientist, you can end up doing a lot of different things. It's not only product development. You can end up getting into more regulatory things. At that company too, I also not only developed the products, but I took them up to full-scale production too. So I'd go out to the places where they were producing them full scale and scale them up, do production runs, the first production run just to make sure everything tasted okay, all that kind of stuff. So I really enjoyed that part of it, scaling it up and all that kind of stuff. Anytime you take something from benchtop to full scale, there's a lot of challenges, so that never goes smoothly. But yeah, it's definitely as a food scientist, like you can do something different at every company. It's different every day. You're not always working on the same things every day. So I don't know, I really enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot more than what I would have been doing as an engineer. I like the development side of things. Like I said, I like cooking and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of stemmed from that passion that I had. And yeah, it's an exciting field to work in. But yeah, back to, I guess, how I was as a consumer. So I kind of started at that company, questioning my beliefs a little bit, still bought organic, I was never really about the non-GMO just because I didn't really think that necessarily meant healthier, but definitely still bought organic foods. It was the type of thing that I guess I didn't really necessarily look into it. And I was fortunate enough to be able to afford it. So I just kind of was like, why not? Like, this could be healthier. I might as well just buy it, type of thing, which I'm sure a lot of people do as well. And they don't really look into the science behind it. I mean, if you can afford it, it's like, sure, why not? So then I was at that company for about 2 to 2.5 years. And then I got pregnant with my daughter. So while I was pregnant, was planning on breastfeeding, making all of her, pureeing all of her foods, buying all organic foods, pureeing them for her. That was I was still kind of on the organic train at the time, and wanted to do all that stuff. And of course, you read all the mommy blogs, and it's like, oh, pureeing your children's food, make sure it's organic, all that kind of stuff. And then 2 weeks before her due date, we found out that she had a stroke at some time during the pregnancy. So we didn't know if she was going to live. Your brain at that time kind of goes from not really caring about breastfeeding versus bottle feeding. I mean, when she was born, she lived, and then we weren't really sure if she was ever going to be able to eat on her own. So really kind of puts it into perspective. Didn't really care about breastfeeding anymore. Still tried, didn't work out. But yeah, so that just I think switched my mindset. It was kind of a turning point for me, just because I had been fortunate enough to never really need, I guess you could say, like doctors or the medical community. I never really had anything happen to me where I relied on doctors or anything like that. So this was the first time in my life where, they essentially saved both of our lives. So she was in the NICU for 3 weeks, ended up being blind. She has cerebral palsy, has a lot of developmental challenges, but just starting to, I guess, rely more on science and doctors and that kind of thing. I had severe preeclampsia. If it wasn't for the doctors, I wouldn't have lived either. So I think that kind of started switching my mindset over to more of a science and evidence-based versus just like, oh, this is what I believe, I don't really need to look into it, like I just believe this kind of thing. And then when she was about 6 months old, um, I started joining a lot of Facebook mom special needs groups, stuff like that. Kept hearing about stem cell treatments, and so I started looking into that because there were a lot of people going and getting stem cell treatments for their children with cerebral palsy. And so I was like, wow, like all these people are getting great results. I wonder if this is something that we should do. So then I guess that kind of put me down a rabbit hole. I found the website Science Based Medicine, realized that these stem cell treatments were being done by chiropractors, not real doctors. There is a lot of research going into it right now, but it's not something proven yet. So I think that kind of put me on the path of starting to just research things a lot more. Like I said, I found science-based medicine, and then I, went on Facebook and found Farm Babe and found all these different pages where I was just starting to read more about food. And I was just like, wow, this is the opposite of kind of everything that I used to think before. And just started realizing how wrong I was in what I believed, and I never really looked into it. So that just kind of put me on the path of kind of where I am today. Just reading all these mom blogs and reading obviously like Food Babe, stuff like that. And I think kind of what put me over the edge was the Cheerios and the glyphosate thing. And I was just, for a while, I kind of wanted to start my own page. Wasn't really sure if anyone would care about it or if I knew enough to even start my own page. But I was just like, I'm just going to try it and see what happens. And yeah, I mean, I guess it's taken off. And I was just really fed up with all of the false information, especially targeted towards moms of young children. And I was sick of being taken advantage of, feeling guilty for buying my child the Gerber baby foods versus making it on my own. I mean, for a while I felt guilty about it, and that's nothing that us as moms should feel guilty about. So that's kind of my motivation behind starting my own page, giving people the information that I wish I would have had about 10 years ago, especially as a new mom. I mean, we have enough to worry about. We don't need to worry about feeding our children organic foods. And obviously for a lot of people, it's not, we can't afford it. So I really wanted to get the information out there that, hey, we don't need to feel guilty about this. This isn't necessarily healthier. Yeah, so that's kind of why I started, and that's what I'm doing today. So hopefully the information I share on my pages is helpful to everybody. I'm just going to check and see if anyone has any questions. I don't see anything right now, but yeah, if you don't already, follow me on Facebook, Food Science Babe, and then Instagram at Food Science Babe, and then on Twitter at Food Sci Babe. If you have any questions, if you weren't able to watch this live too, feel free to post questions on here, and I can write back and answer, or you can send me a message. I try to answer my messages as frequently as I can. Okay, so here's a question. What advice would you give people who are still hesitant about GMOs? I think, well, I guess just looking at the information that I've shared, but I guess just learning about what GMOs are was my biggest thing. I really didn't understand what GMOs were, and I just kind of was like, oh, well, if there's a label that is specifically saying non-GMO, there must be something wrong with GMOs. And I think a lot of consumers just have that same thought process, which is exactly why they created the label. But I think just learning about what they are and realizing like all GMOs are, genetic modification is just a method to modify genes. And we've been doing it for thousands of years in the form of crossbreeding. Mutagenesis has been around since the 1930s. I mean, these are things that nobody's really concerned about, and we don't need to be concerned about. We know that it creates safe foods. So these newer ways of genetically engineering foods are more precise. They're way more heavily regulated. They create just as safe of foods as the, you know, as crossbreeding, as mutagenesis, as all these other modification techniques that nobody's scared about. So I think the biggest thing with GMOs is just learning about them. SciMoms, actually, I always refer people to Intro to GMOs. The SciMoms did a great introduction, just to, you know, very introductory information, just exactly what they are, how they're created. A lot of people are so concerned about the process of how foods are modified, but really we need to look at the end product. And as long as the end products are being tested, making sure that they're nutritious, there aren't any other allergens created. So I think just switching the focus from the process being used to the end product, and realizing that these foods are safe. We have the safest food supply in history right now, and that's not something that we really need to be concerned about. But I think just learning about it, I mean, the people that are the most against it know the least about it. So I think just learn about what it actually is, and when you understand it, it's like, oh, this yeah, I don't when I started learning about it, I was like, wow, I can't believe that I was actually like afraid of this, or I didn't even really look into what it was before. But now that I know it, it just doesn't even make sense why somebody would be afraid of it. And studies have also shown that non-GMO and GMO are equally as safe, equally as nutritious. So we know that as well. Somebody asked, what are the goals for my Food Science Babe platform and page? Yeah, I've been asked that before. I guess I don't really know, because I kind of just started it and didn't really necessarily think it would go anywhere. So I guess just keep advocating for science. I mean, my biggest goal is for people to not be afraid of their food. That's the biggest thing. I'm not connected to any particular industry. Right now, what I do is I consult for small startup food companies. So a lot of the projects I work on are non-GMO and organic products. I don't really have control over that. If a client wants their product non-GMO verified, or they want it to be organic, I mean, I still develop it for them. So I guess just getting the information out there so people can make educated decisions. I'm never telling people what they should eat or what they shouldn't eat. It's just, here's the information, here are the studies, do what you want with it, but just don't make your decisions, you know, based on fear, which is what I used to do. Make them based on science. So, you know, I don't need to spend more on organic. I don't need to spend more on non-GMO. Like, I'm getting just as safe and nutritious of a product by buying conventional. And that was one thing too. I mean, I used to go to the store and kind of shop based on the Dirty Dozen list, which I know now is not based on science at all. But if they didn't have organic strawberries, I just wouldn't, or if they were too expensive, I just wouldn't buy the strawberries, which is so much worse for your health than you know, buying conventional produce. The biggest thing is to eat your fruits and vegetables. Don't worry about whether they're organic or not. So yeah, I guess my goal is just to inform consumers and hopefully allow more people to figure out sooner than I did that they don't need to be afraid of their food. Let's see, I don't see any other questions. I'm just trying to think if I covered everything. Yeah, I kind of forgot to talk about what I do now, but I consult for, I do consulting very part-time. I take care of my daughter most days, but I work part-time as a consultant. So a lot of companies are very, very small startup companies. So I've been helping to formulate products, create nutrition panels for people that already have products formulated, help with scale up if I can, but I don't have a lot of time to do that right now. But I have been able to make it out to some people's facilities to help them formulate their products, stuff like that. So it's a lot of different products, different work. I enjoy working on new things that I've never worked on before. I was just working on a sort of like I guess a healthier hamburger helper type meal the other day, trying to figure out their serving size for their nutrition panels. So I do a lot of stuff like that now. So yeah, I guess if nobody, I don't know, if anyone has any other questions, you can ask and I can answer them before I go. But yeah, otherwise, follow me at Food Science Babe. Yeah, feel free to ask questions, send me messages. I'll try to get back to you, but thanks for tuning in. Bye.